Hello people, this is Sonali, the Melodramatic Bookworm. If you've been here before, welcome back, and if you're new to my channel, welcome to the Melodramatic Bookworm family. Today's video is the next in the end of year series that I usually do at the end of every year, and today I'm going to be talking about my favorite books of 2020, because as much as 2020 was a horrible year, I thought let's end this year on the last day of the year with some of my favorite books and spread some positivity perhaps. So I'm here to talk about 20 books that I read in 2020 that I absolutely loved. Some of them have made their way onto my favorite books of all time list, and they are going to stay there, man, because of what they represent and what they spoke about and a lot more. So I will take you through all of these books. I've already spoken about a lot of these books in my previous wrap-ups as well, so if you'd like to check them out, I'll leave the links to those wrap-up videos in the description box below. So without any further ado, let's get into this video and let me spread some bookish love and positivity and share with you the 20 books that I absolutely loved in 2020. So these books are going to be in the order in which I read them. Like, the book that I read earlier in the year will come first. I will talk about it first. So that's not a huge indicator of my preference for the book, but there is one book that I really want to talk about and tell you how much I loved it. It's my favorite book of the year and one of my favorites of all time, and if you've been following me for a while, you will know what this book is about, and you might have guessed already. And that book is The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. This is one of my favorites, all-time favorites. I cannot tell you how much this book impacted me. The first time I spoke about this book in detail, like, I broke down on camera. It's there. So this came to me at a time when I was really contemplating my decisions. I was wondering if the decisions that I was making were right or not, and it was at that precise moment that this book came out, and I read this book, and it was simply like Matt Haig knew me. It's like he knows my innermost thoughts and he put them in here, and it just wrung my heart. I cried like a baby, and this storyline, along with Matt Haig's writing, it makes it into something that is totally unbelievable in a manner that you will understand if you read this book. Like, Matt Haig is one of my favorite people on the planet, and there's no two ways about it. And this is one book that I will always cherish. I even bought the audiobook for this book, and I will be reading it in January. I'm hoping I will listen to it. I don't care if my other books stare at me or whatever, it's worth it. But go read Midnight Library. Go. It's become my life's mission to make people read this book. Okay, so now let's get on with the sequence. And next book is also a Matt Haig book only, because one of the first books that I read this year in January was Reasons to Stay Alive, and oh my god, this wrecked me also like Midnight Library, and I cried, I bawled. I don't think there's any other word for it. This is Matt Haig's own story. Pretty recently, it was 24 years since he had contemplated suicide, and he stood on a cliff in Spain contemplating jumping off that cliff and ending his life. And this book is an ode to the people in his life, the lessons that he has learned, and he talks about how he felt during that time, as well as how it's okay to feel those things, but he also gives you tips as to how to make yourself feel better during that time and not beat yourself up. And I love this book, man. This book is just simply phenomenal. Like, what else can I say about Matt Haig's books? Because I think you've seen me gush about his books a lot, as in, it's not like, oh, I love Matt Haig's books and all. It's straight up crying. Like, I've been crying on camera. So if you haven't read Matt Haig's books yet, I'd suggest read this and then go to Midnight Library. It's going to be amazing. Next is a book that I did not expect would make its way onto my favorites list, and I did not expect a classic to make its way onto my favorite list, because this list has quite a few of them, and I'm super surprised. The book I'm talking about is Little Women by Louisa May Alcott, and I must tell you that I read this under super pressure, but I did manage to finish it just before the movie. I think I had about 30-40 pages left before we went and watched the movie, but to a large extent I did finish it, and friends ruined one particular big plot twist for me. But that's okay. This is a phenomenal classic. There are a lot of wholesome characters in here, and especially Marmee. I mean, that character is one of my favorites of all time. Every time she came into a scene, I was like, yes, I love you. And Laura Dern playing Marmee in the movie was something else. The thing is, it feels like I'm talking a lot about this movie, but then again, I must tell you, my husband and I were both so pissed off. You know why? I mean, there were a bunch of good-looking actresses, so stunning, like Saoirse Ronan, Emma Watson, come on, and Florence Pugh, Laura Dern, and Timothée Chalamet was the prettiest of them all. Who gave him the right? This is the story of 4 sisters, Jo, Beth, Meg, and Amy, and they are the March sisters, and each of them has a different personality, and the way their equation with each other, their characters, the friendships they make, their familial relationships, and there's so much more to this. This is a book that you should experience. If you are a lover of classics, I think you will already have read it and loved it, because it's a majority, a whopping majority of people love this book. But if you're looking to start reading classics as well, I think this is a great place that you can start, and it's just one of my favorites now. Next is a non-fiction book that was sent to me as a gift by Kritika from Ask the Bookbug on Instagram, and that book is What We Talk About When We Talk About Rape by Sohaila Abdullali. Sohaila Abdullali is a rape survivor herself, and she talks about how it is so bizarrely taboo to not talk about rape when we really need to have a conversation about it, how women are treated, how men are treated, and how callous people can be when it comes to rape victims. It's all in the victim shaming and blaming, and there's a lot more that the author has packed into this. She talks about when it happened to her, there wasn't a lot of a conversation that was happening in the public, but 30 years later when Nirbhaya happened, it was a huge outcry was raised, and she was happy about it, and she decided to write this book. Reading this book will make you super uncomfortable, but reading this book is necessary. So please go and read this book. You will get a lot of insight into how things have changed in just a span of 3 decades. And we know that even 2 to 3 years can bring a lot of change, but to see that in such an important matter, that so much has changed and so much has gotten better, but so much is still also where it was at that time. The mindsets haven't changed much, and that's a shame, but there's also a little bit of hope because there are more people willing to have a discourse on this, and I would highly recommend this to you. Please do go read it. It's important, and pick it up already, please. Next is a book that I listen to on Libro FM, and this book is so spooky. It scared the shit out of me, and it took me a long time to finish, but I absolutely loved it. The book I'm talking about is Tigers Not Daughters by Samantha Mabry. This is the story of 4 sisters, one of whom died after falling out of a window, and her ghost haunts the other sisters. But these sisters are part of an abusive household, and how they get through their day and their decisions that they are about to take because they want to escape. They don't want to live in a house where they are treated like that, and how they realize that their sister is still with them and what they do about it. It forms this entire story. First of all, it is absolutely spooky. I made sure that I did not read it during the dead of the night because no man, I'm a scaredy cat, and even reading this, even here listening to whooshing noises, not my thing. I'm really sorry. But when I did read it, it was something else, because that connection, that sibling connection, it shows in so many ways. It manifests itself in the other 3 sisters, and it is simply heartwarming to see that there was a connection even beyond death. It's not something you would think about or you would believe in real life, but when you're reading the story, you just think that yes, I love this. And I had a tear or two streaming down my cheeks, I'm not gonna lie. Ho ho ho, next book is a huge one. The book is called House of Earth and Blood, the first in the Crescent City series by Sarah J. Maas, and this is, oh god, this was, there's no other word for it. It's wonderful. This was so not what I was expecting. There's so many emotions involved. I cried and cried and cried at like 2 in the AM, and this is, holy shit. So this is the story of Bryce Quinlan. Okay, she used to be a popular girl. She used to party all night along with a friend, and one day someone murders her best friends, and she goes into this whole dark hole where she is mourning her friends and all that, which is obviously natural. But 2 years later, the killings start up again, and this is weird because the city's authorities, Crescent City, the city's authorities, they think that the killer is behind bars, but they now want Bryce to help them. And now enters the picture my book boyfriend. I'm not going to let him go to anyone. My book boyfriend, Hunt Athalar. He is, oh god, he is a fallen angel, okay. And he is supposed to protect Bryce from anything that's happening, and just thinking about him just lights up my face. You just read this book, man. You will see why I'm fawning over him. I mean, what else can I say? Hunt trying to protect Bryce, but Bryce finding out a new trail that leads her into the past, and their attraction. Oh, Bryce, I am so thrilled for you, but I'm also so jealous of you. But we are not going to dwell on that. But this is, oh my god, it takes you a bit of time to get into. This is like 800 pages long, and it'll take you about 200 pages, 200 to 300 pages to get into, because there's not much happening. She's just laying the foundation and all that. But once she starts, you will just want to sit and finish it. It took me some time to finish because I was savoring everything, but otherwise, oh god, this is an amazing book. There's no other word for it. I can't say anything else for it. Next up is a surprise. The book I'm talking about is The Mercies by Kiran Millwood Hargrave. This is a historical fiction book. It's set in 1617, I think, in the island of Vardø in Norway. There are very few people, like I think 80 or 100 people. Yeah, so when the men of that island go fishing, a huge storm arrives and it kills all the men. So now there are only women. So the women are now responsible for looking after themselves, and they have to start, taking baby steps to sustain themselves. And about 1.5 years later, from Scotland, a man arrives. His name is Absalom Cornet, and he is supposed to be, coming to this place and ridding it of the evil that he thinks has taken place, because women should not do everything on their own. They shouldn't be independent and all that. During that time, that was the kind of thinking, right? And he comes along with his wife Ursa, who sees all of this. She sees the independent women and all of that. And this is also around the time of the 1621 witch trials, and you know what's going to happen. And this whole thing, there's an unexpected love story in here, and I was wrecked. By the end of the book, I was a goner. Oh, some of the images are coming back to my mind, and I am proper disturbed. Like, I'm looking into the distance and I'm trying to put them out. But you have to read this book. This is a book that I have been recommending left, right and center. I don't think I speak much of it on Booktube, on my channel, on any of my videos, but this is a book that everybody must read. And I must now say a big thank you once again to Pan Macmillan India for sending this to me, because this was something else, like one of my favorites. Oh god, how many times do I have to say it? It's like, oof. Next is a Hindi classic which I listened to on Storytel, and the narrator was stunning. She did a phenomenal job. The book I'm talking about is Godaan by Munshi Premchand. This is set in the pre-independence era, and it talks about the lives of people in villages during that time, and how the social hierarchy is, even within the family, how structures are, how different roles were from for men and women, the whole point of community, and about how to maintain the relationships, as well as how even the littlest things can wreck those relationships. And the author is a phenomenal person himself, but the narrator made it so much more interesting to read. I was actually reading the book while I was listening to the audiobook, but at one point I was like, I don't need the book. It's one of my favorite Hindi books of all time now. Godaan is one book that I will highly recommend to everyone. I'm not sure if there is a translation of it. I think there is by now. Premchand's works should have been translated by now, but even if there is, I would highly recommend you to read the original, which is in Hindi, or even listen to the audiobook. It's going to be a great experience. Next up is another non-fiction that, oh my god, has my whole heart, and the book is Fight Like a Girl by Clementine Ford, and this is one of my favorite books of all time. See, Clementine Ford, I did not know her much before I read this book, but the ideas she has in here, how she tears down the notion that you can just take women for granted for anything that they do, for that matter. And she gives a lot of examples. She tells us how she was treated, how she grew out of her body, the expectations that society has for women and for men, how men are treated due to toxic masculinity, and even if there is a small iota of femininity about a man, he is branded names. And I really love the fact that she has owned it. She tells in the book that there are so many people who send her hate messages. If you see her Instagram stories, that every single day there's one or the other person who is shitting in her DMs. And I mean, humans are the worst. Like, we've established that, re-established that and all that. I love how she has written this book, man. It's really inspirational. And you know what the thing is, it's not just about how women are treated that she talks in this book. She also talks about how toxic masculinity and about how expectations affect men as well. But no, people don't want to see that, right? They just want to see that, oh, you're talking about the upliftment of women, you are a misandrist, you hate men. How can you hate men? Oh, I shouldn't have. Oh god. Okay, this next book, it still sets my heart pounding when I read it. Good god. The book is called All Your Perfects by Colleen Hoover, and why does she have to write books that wreck my emotions? I don't know. I have absolutely no idea, but this is a story of Quinn and Graham, who meet when their respective partners are cheating on them, and Quinn is back home early and she finds Graham there, and his girlfriend is cheating with her boyfriend and all that. That's how they meet, and then 1 year later they are in a relationship, but 7 years later they are in a marriage and nothing seems to be going right. They are closed off from each other, they are distant from each other, but there's something. They know that love is there, but they have to now find out what to do about it. It's a really bad gist, but I'm really rattled by that ending. Like, I had to go and read that last part, and I almost choked up again, because when I read this book, I cried, and I was crying like proper, that kind of crying. And I don't know what it is about Colleen Hoover's books that they burrow deep into your heart. It takes your heart out from your chest, does this, plays basketball with it, and then puts it back, all bruised and battered. And your eyes are also, they're all red and puffy from all the crying. One of my favorite love stories of all time. Of all time. And it's amazing. It will set your heart racing. It will make you cry. it will make you, oh, why are you doing this? You want to scream at the characters, but you also know why they are doing this, and you'll think that maybe I would have also done the same if I were in their position. And it's brilliant, man. Next is a book that Bloomsbury India sent me an uncorrected proof of, and I love this book so much, and I was not expecting to love it this much. This is also a kind of love story, but it is mixed with politics. The book I'm talking about is Swimming in the Dark by Thomas Jedrowski, and this is the story of Ludwig and Janice, who in 1980 Poland, they meet and they fall in love, and they have this whole kind of adventure thing and all, and at the end of that adventure they're like, okay, now we have to go back to the city, and their beliefs, their motivations, they come to the front, and it shows how much each of them is willing to fight for what they think is right, and how much each of them is willing to settle in a situation where their love is not going to be accepted that easily. And oh boy, the way the author has combined politics and love and the whole point of finding oneself, it's simply mind-blowing to say the least, because this is not something that you can read lightly, because this holds a lot of historical weight. There's a lot of things that happened during history that we have not much idea about, and we don't know how those events affected life in Poland during that time. But this book shows the gravity of it all. It shows that weight, it shows that fight that's left in people, and it shows how some people, they think that it's not worth it. And this is a book that you should definitely pick up. Next up is one of the warmest, the most beautiful books I've read in a long time. It's a children's book and I love it, and that is Heidi by Johanna Spyri. And this is the story of Heidi, who is a lively young girl, and she goes to live with her grandfather in the Swiss Alps, and her character is such that she makes friends very easily, and she even softens her stern grandfather. But one day she is sent to live with a differently abled girl in Frankfurt, but she misses the mountains, because that is where she envisions herself living, and whether she will be able to go back to those mountains or not. Oh, it is so wholesome, this book. See, Heidi makes you want to go get into the pages and hug her. She is that child who you want to hug and who you want to admire. And you admire her because of everything that goes on in this book. You just want to go to the mountains, just lie down in the whatever place she is lying down in the amidst the wilderness, and you watch the goats doing their thing. You talk with your friends, you talk with Heidi and her friends. There's a lot happening in this book, and I love this book so much. I mean, I don't think I can say it enough, but this is one book that I should have read a long time ago. But this is a book that everybody must read, and especially if you are a beginner or if you are a child looking for new books, then this is one that you should read, because it's so pure, it's so cute, it's so lovely. It will transport you to the Swiss Alps and it will make you want to stay there. And you know what? Ever since I've gone there, I haven't returned whole. A part of me is still over there. Next up is a book that everyone on Bookstagram and Booktube have been raving about, including me. This book is The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. This was my introduction to T.J. Klune books, and oh boy, where do I even start? This story has a magical house with magical kids, and this is a sort of an orphanage, this house. So the department in charge of magical youth, I think it is, they send Linus Baker to this house in order to write down a report of all the children over there, and so that they can regulate them. But what happens when he gets there is for you to read and find out, because I'm not going to say anything else. It is it tells you in no uncertain terms that prejudices are societal. Like, society will tell you that this thing is bad, you should not be doing this thing, but then again you need to find out for yourself as well. There is so much in here, there's so much warmth. You just want to go into the book and hug all the kids in that orphanage. You don't want to let go because each of them is a different character. But this book is brilliant in every way, and it just leaves you with that nice feeling, okay? You just want everything to go right in the end, and for the kids and for the people involved, there's a little story in there also, and you want everybody to be happy at the end of it all. And oh god, what happiness, what joy this book gives you. It makes I was grinning like an idiot. I was smiling at how cute some of the incidents were, and I was grinning when there was this humor where the children are pulling Linus Baker's leg. And oh, please read this book. Read it already, please. Next up is Art Matters by Neil Gaiman and illustrated by Chris Riddell, and this book tells you why art matters. This came to me at a time where I was questioning my creativity, questioning my thought processes, and there was a lot of self-doubt happening at that time. And when I read this book, it made me feel so much better. See, for a start, it made me stop doubting myself, but that's what this book is all about. It tells you to have confidence in yourself, to have confidence in your own art, and to keep doing what you're doing, because there will come a time when the whole thing will finally make sense. And whatever you do, even if it's just for yourself, it matters. The art that you do matters, even if it's painting or writing or whatever it is, whatever form of art. It matters, man. Please go read this book. If you are an artist of any kind, read this book. It will be super helpful to you. Next up is a book that is super important. There is child abuse, both emotional and sexual, and there is depression, there is gaslighting, and a whole lot more. The book I'm talking about is My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell, and this book made me so angry. It's about Vanessa Y, who is now 32 years old, and there are now allegations from a woman who against her ex-teacher, who she thought she was in love at the time when she was in school. And there are a lot of allegations against that particular teacher, and people are asking her to come forward because they have an inkling that something was wrong in their relationship. And Vanessa is like, no, he did not abuse me, he did not sexually abuse me, we were totally in love. And this whole book transitions between the past and the present, and when you read the past, even the present is like that, but the past is even worse, because you see Vanessa being pulled in by that teacher, and he's an obvious pedophile, and he does things, he says things that Vanessa thinks are okay. She thinks that oh, he loves me so much and he's doing it for me. Well, but it's not. And there's a lot of gaslighting and stuff going on over there, and the man, he makes her feel that she is the one in the wrong and that he's doing so much for the relationship and all of that. And there's so many red flags, and you're like, girl, oh no. But that's the thing, you can't say girl at her, because the problem lies with that teacher, that man, that horrid man. And even in the present, the man, the teacher, Jacob Strain, is trying to emotionally blackmail her. And now whenever Vanessa is on the brink of realizing what had happened with her, this man is there to pull her back, and that's what's happening. And now she has to reevaluate her own past, her own life. And oh my god, this book wrecked me. I couldn't think straight for a while after I finished reading this book, and we had a discussion about it, and I couldn't get words out. I wasn't able to talk about it because of how deeply disgusting this man was, and the knowledge that such men do exist in real life. That makes me even angrier. Like, even now I'm not able to talk properly. But if you are planning to read this book, please keep the trigger warnings in mind. There is child sexual abuse, there's gaslighting, there's depression, and there's a whole lot of other plethora of issues that are mentioned in here. Good God, man, good God. This is a debut novel, and the author has hit the nail on the head by addressing such issues in this book. It's simply phenomenal. Okay, next, I actually forgot to mention this earlier in the video, but the book is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, and this is a book that was I read it earlier this year. It was a long time coming and I absolutely loved it. I mean, Liz Bennet is one of the strongest women characters in historical fiction books that I have ever read, and in classics, and it's But this book talks about the Bennet family, the sisters, and their suitors who come to the area, and especially a man called Mr. Darcy. This was written in 1813 apparently, and this is a comedy of manners written, and she mocks contemporary society. Especially Liz does things that you would not expect a woman of those times to do, and that's what makes it so refreshing. The love story in there, like, crinkly-nosed Mr. Darcy, he's always aloof and uptight and whatnot, and the way he behaves with Liz, and the way that Mr. Bingley is one of the finest gentlemen there is, but he's a sort of a pushover, but we're not going to talk about that. See, this is a social commentary about the times during which it was written in, and Austen wrote it when she was 21 apparently, and I love the sass in this book. There is so much sass, and not just Liz, even Mr. Bennet, her father, his dry wit is I'm a fan of, because he is not going to take anyone's nonsense, and you can see where Liz gets it from. See, I started off reading the book being very annoyed with Mr. Darcy. I'm like, good riddance, just don't talk to him anymore, Liz. He doesn't deserve you and all that. But by the end of the book, I was really surprised to see that his love for Elizabeth, it overshadowed everything else, and brought about such a huge change in his character that I was like, yes, Liz and Darcy forever. This is an amazing classic, and I didn't think I would love it this much, because I was not a fan of classics, but now I'm slowly getting around to them, and I'm a huge fan of this. Next is a book that was shortlisted for the JCB Prize for Literature 2020, and I have a full video discussing the books that were shortlisted up on my channel. If you'd like to go check that out, I'll leave the link here as well as in the description box below. The book that made its way onto my favorites list is These Are Bodies Possessed by Light by Dharini Bhaskar. The writing is so lyrical, it chips away at you, and it will make you feel things that you didn't think you could feel while reading a book about extramarital affairs or love stories, or the reasons behind a person's actions and why, when they are looking for validation. The moment I finished reading this book, I was in a black hole, because I could not find out what my own emotions were, because it was that stunning. It had numbed me, it had made me cry, it had made me think that no other book could come even close to making me feel this way, which is not true, but in that moment when a book makes you feel like that, you take it to be true. Next up is an absolute classic, and I thought I'm not reading it, so maybe I should add it to my 20 books on 2020 list, and I added it. And you know what, surprise surprise, even though there are 3 books remaining in that list, I did get to it, and that book is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, and I buddy read this with Nandini from Read Dream Repeat, and we absolutely loved this book. We had almost the same thoughts about what went on in here, and this is classified as gothic fiction. And this talks about the unnamed narrator who is a companion to a woman, and they are in Monte Carlo, and there she meets Maxim de Winter. They fall in love and they get married and they go to Venice, and then when it's time to come back to Mandalay again, she is nervous, and when they come back, she realizes that she has to deal with being the second wife of the man she is now in love with, and that Rebecca, who was his first wife, she is everywhere. There is so much more to this book than just that. There is, oh my god, a lot. It creeped me out, and in the first 300 odd pages I felt like I could not go forward with this. I just didn't think that that I wanted to pick this book up. Because the story wasn't moving, it wasn't going anywhere. She was just establishing the setting and all that, and I didn't want to pick this book up at that point in time. But once it got going, around 200-250 pages, I was hooked, and I finished this in one night, I think. It's not the kind of book where you will fall in love with it because of how fast the plot is moving. It's solely because of the writing. The writing is so atmospheric, it transports you to a Mandalay that you have never seen. But yes, this is a book that I absolutely loved, and I'm so glad I read it. I'm so glad we decided to pick it up and buddy read it. Next up is a book that oh my god, I loved so much, and that is The Girl and the Goddess by Nikita Gill. This was one of my most anticipated books of this year. You know, Nikita Gill is one of my favorite authors of all time, one of my favorite people of all time, and she writes in such a powerful manner. She makes you feel like, I've never thought of that before, but it's so right. And as an Indian woman, to see the things that I have experienced, to see it reflected in this book, and to see that, oh yeah, that happened to me, and I never realized that could have been wrong, and that was something else to think about. The injustices that women have to go through, the microaggressions that women have to go through. See, I don't want to say much about the story of this book, because I feel like you have to experience it for yourself. But the story of Paro and how she gets through life, and how she gets through life being an Indian girl, it forms the entire story, and it takes you through it while ripping your heart in half, but it also stitches it back up at the same time with its strength and power, and I'm like, huh. But this is a book that I will definitely highly recommend and ask every one of you to read, because it's that phenomenal. The last book on this list is a book that I also read in December, and that is The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. This was also on the 20 books I want to read in 2020 list, and I am so glad I read this book, which is a historical fiction set in World War II, and about how two sisters, they each are so brave in their own ways. Like at the beginning, there are completely different signs for these two characters. One of them is completely she won't take shit from anyone, and the other is very meek. She will do what she has to do to get some peace of mind. And by the end of the book, you are so in love with both of these characters, both of them for their strength, because there is a completely different kind of strength that each of these sisters have. And to see how World War II and how Hitler's madness affected people. This is a fictional story, but it still rankles me that people could defend that man. This is set in France, in a little town in France, and how the whole war affected that particular town and that country and the people and these two sisters, Isabel and Vianne. It forms the entire story, and it broke my heart, man. It absolutely broke my heart, and I will always highly recommend this book. This is a hard-hitting book, and you will feel proud, you will feel angry, you will feel happy in the small joys of life that they experience. There's a lot of emotions that will come over you through this, and you have to just keep yourself sane. So those were my 20 favorite books of 2020. Which of these have you read? Which ones have you read and liked? Which ones have you read and not liked? Which ones are on your TBR? Which ones are on your wish list? Which books do you want to buy? Which books are you starting off 2021 with? Which were your favorite books of 2020? And what are you looking forward to among these books? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. If you like this video, please like it and share it to spread the word. And if you like my content and would like to see more from me, don't forget to subscribe and click on the bell icon beside the subscribe button to get notified as and when I post new videos. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Until next time, keep reading, keep watching, and add melodrama to your life.